Thanks for the opportunity to come and share. I'm going to just share some experiences from my life. I realized when we were going around the circle that a lot of you understand already what I'm going to be talking about when God has a calling on your life and you know it, and you've got that passion that's burning within you. So some of this may already be, you're like, duh, I know this. Well, okay, let's talk about something else. But what I also want to challenge you through this, maybe give you some tools and some skills to help others understand and develop their calling. That's one of the things that I've been able to do throughout my journey in both nonprofits, for-profits, ministries, working with churches, is I come across individuals all the time that they feel stuck. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They've got this passion, they've got this job or this career, and they're not aligning, or they just feel stuck. They don't feel like they know where they're supposed to go. And so let's talk about some things as we go. I love this verse. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Let's just break that down really quick. So in all things, what does that mean? Well, it truly means all things, right? All of us in this room are kingdom-minded. So we know that there is no separation from the sacred and the secular. And you know, I grew up in church thinking that only those that had the title of pastor or missionary were in ministry or were called. And then as I got more and more involved in missions and ministry and coming across bivocational pastors in third world countries, I realized that no, we're all ministers, we're all pastors, we're all called. It's all in, it's for all of us, right? So there is no separation of sacred and secular. God works for the good of those who love Him, right? That's all of us in this room. So I'm not going to say anything more about that. But who have been called according to His purpose. Okay? What does that mean to be called according to His purpose, right? Whether you realize it or not, God has a unique call and purpose for your life. You may be in the middle of that, what I like to call the sweet spot. You may be in your sweet spot. All right? Are you helping others find theirs? Understand what their sweet spot is. So you're called for what purpose? And also something I'm going to tease and we'll get back to, is there a difference between your career or your ministry and your significance? Okay, I'm going to tease that up and then we'll come back to it. So as I was thinking and praying about this and over the years and helping individuals develop and understand, hear their calling from God, I realized that there's kind of three levels or layers to this. And we're going to start at the bottom. The first one is your job. Okay, you have a job. For a lot of us, that's a seasonal or temporary thing. I was going to college down at Point Loma. I thought God wanted me to be an English professor. Obviously, He had a different calling on my life. But my job was to be a valet, right? I worked at one of the resorts down in San Diego parking cars. I scratched a few of them along the way and quickly realized that was not the calling that God had on my life, okay? So if any of you got your car scratched down in San Diego in the early 90s, I apologize. But I was studying at the time for what I thought was going to be my career, right? So we go to school, seminary, we study for what we believe is our career. And then I believe that's where most people get stuck, right? They get stuck in a job that maybe eventually leads to a career, or they get into a career and they feel like they're stuck. They've studied for all this time, or they've worked all this hard to become whatever it is, realtor, accountant, banker, whatever it is, but they feel stuck. But yet there's this thing that's going on inside of them, this thing on the side, this passion, this burning that just won't go away. What is that? I believe that's God's calling on your life, on their life. Right? So how do we either get ourselves or help others get up into that calling, which may be inside of the career or the job that we have, to find more fulfilling activity in that, or it may be outside of that career, or it may be in addition to that career. Okay? So for example, Pooch and I have a friend named Dave Delahan. He's a realtor. But Dave has an interesting past, and I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this. He spent a lot of time growing up, drugs, sex, alcohol. In his formative years, that's what he was involved in. right? But as he came to know Christ, as he became a realtor, very successful realtor, he realized that he had a calling to help young men not go down the same path that he went down. So his, in addition to, is coaching young men in football. So he's been an assistant coach, a head coach, coaching football, because when he coaches football, he gets into both Christian and secular settings in schools, Bradshaw Christian and other schools where he's coached, where he comes in direct contact with young men that he can coach and mentor and pour into and help them not go down the same path that he went down, right? I also want to share about Greg, who I just recently met. So I work in development at Agape International Ministries, and part of that is going out and talking about what's going on with AIM, what God is doing in Cambodia as we rescue girls out of sex trafficking and help prevent kids from ever getting in that. And I got to meet Greg, who's a very successful asset manager, investment broker, who is towards the end of his career. Now, Greg's very successful. He's a Christian businessman. He's supported his church for years, supported ministry for years. But as I got to know Greg, I just really sensed in one of our meetings, our lunch meeting, that God wanted me to probe deeper into his life and get to know him better. Beyond just trying to get a donation or beyond just trying to get him to get more involved with the work of AIM, I really sensed that God wanted me to get to know him at a deeper level. So I asked him one time, I said, "What's your passion? What do you feel like God is calling you to?" And he paused. And he said, "I have a passion for helping Christian ministries do a better job of managing their finances." And I said, "Awesome. We could use your help. I know other ministries that could use your help." But he also said, "I also have a passion for finding businesses, social enterprises that want to invest in kingdom business, kingdom enterprise that fuel ministry." So for-profit business that instead of returning the profit to shareholders or investors, returns that profit back into fueling more ministry. He's connected with some very wealthy individuals, and this is his passion. And I'm thinking, awesome. Because that's one of the things that AIM, we're trying to do, is not only develop businesses that will employ girls that have been rescued out of sex trafficking, like our bracelets and our clothing, and some of you are familiar with that, but we're also trying to develop additional businesses like boutique hotels or coffee shops where we can employ girls, train them for those industries, and then through that further fuel our ministry, right? And find more sustainable sources. Because at some point, nonprofits, charitable nations, all of that, it's going to be more and more stringent. It's going to be more and more rigorous. And at some point, those tax deductions are starting to go away or will go away. So we're looking for ways to become more sustainable. Enter into the scene Greg, whose passion is developing businesses that will fuel ministry, right? So a total God moment in searching and helping to understand what is Greg's calling, what is his passion. We all know that there are many in the Bible, Moses, Nehemiah, Esther, who were called for a specific reason, for a specific season. I love the story of Nehemiah. And when you look at that, in the first part of Nehemiah, it says in verse 3, "They said to me, 'Those who survived the exile are back in the province, are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down. Its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven.'" So Nehemiah hears what's going on in Jerusalem. He has a burden. He wants to do something about it. So he goes before the king, a secular king, because his role, his ministry, his calling was always to be more than just a cupbearer. But he was waiting for that moment of activation, that burden that took on activation. So the king said to me, the king saw that he was frustrated or sad or upset. The king said to me, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven. In that moment, he prays. and he knew what to say. I answered the king, if it pleases the king, if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city of Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it. This is his mission statement, right? His vision, his passion, his calling is to go out and rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and through that, change the trajectory of an entire nation. So he said to the people that he'd gathered around him, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins. Its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall, and we will no longer be in disgrace. And we know that through this story, Nehemiah came across a lot of obstacles. Internal corruption, external armies that were trying to come against them. But ultimately, in the end, God prevailed. Esther and how she rescued the Israelites from being annihilated. And we know Jesus was called, right? He had wow. Talk about someone who was called, who knew their calling, right? He came to seek and save the lost. But not only this, I love the way that John handles this. When Jesus is getting ready to go to the cross, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, right? So he was a man with authority, right? And we all have that same authority. And he had come from God. He knew where he had come from, and he knew where he was going, right? And he was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. So he knew his calling. He knew where he was from, where he was going, knew what he was supposed to do, and through that, he served others. And many of you are doing that with your calling. In your ministries, you're serving others. Jesus is the best example of that. When you know and understand your calling, you begin to help and serve others through that calling. All right, I'm going to skip this just for the sake of time, but I want to have a discussion time at the end. But let me share a little bit more about my calling. So you can already hopefully understand some of the things that I'm passionate about, right? Helping people, helping those that have been trafficked, helping to find them jobs. But I also know that God has called me to fixing things that are broken in organizations and ministries and churches and a variety of places where I've served. Let's postpone that. Either fixing things that are broken or starting new things. So in the variety of places where I've worked, whether it's working with Habitat for Humanity as a director in Uganda, or working with World Vision to help start new church partnerships, or now working with AIM to help start new corporate and church partnerships, I've always been in a place where either I've had an opportunity to fix things that are broken, systems or processes, to help fuel, to help keep ministry going, help make it even more efficient, to be better stewards of the resources that God has given us, or to start new things, to launch new initiatives, to start new businesses, whatever it is. So as I've been able to develop that calling and that thing that fuels me, the passion that I have, I've not only been able to share that with others, but I've been able to go and serve in places all over the world. Because one of the things that I've realized is that my particular calling, my unique calling, doesn't respect organizations or boundaries or even job titles, right? And oftentimes when we feel stuck, or when others that we're coaching or mentoring feel stuck, it's because they don't realize that they have that calling on their life. There's a higher purpose for them. And it may not be where they're currently at, the city they're living in, or the job that they're in, or the title that they have. Because I believe that God's calling on our life for all of us will stretch us, it will grow us, it will take us places that we never thought we would go. And for some of us, that is outside of where we currently are, or it's in addition to what we're currently doing. All right, so I want to come back to this because, I have to be honest, this is something that I really struggled with early on. Where does my meaning and significance come from? Does it come from the organization that I work for, or the church that I work for, or the senior pastor that I work for? Is that where my meaning and significance, my identity came from? No. It was because I'm a child of the King. It's because I'm a son or daughter of the King. That's where my identity comes from. What I do as a part of that then is an outflowing of God's calling and purpose for my life, right? So in God's equation, you have significance and meaning and purpose, period, because you are his heir, beloved son or daughter. There isn't anything that we can do to lose that, and there isn't anything that we have to do to earn that. So we can all take a deep breath and rest knowing that our identity is solid and firm, and it's not in what we do, right? It's in who we are. And then out of that flows the purpose and the calling that God has for our life, right? Because when our jobs change, when our careers change, when our ministries change, that doesn't define who we are, right? Is this resonating with anyone? Okay. All right. Good. Sorry, I tend to get excited and talk really fast, so. All right. I love this quote from Ron Hutchcraft. He talks about the struggle that Jeremiah had. In Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. So when Jeremiah expresses his sense of being inadequate to carry out his calling, God says to him, and this was Jeremiah's calling, you must go to everyone I send you and say whatever I command you to say. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you. Follow God where he's taking you, Ron says. The alternative, a future filled with bitter regrets of someone who knows they've missed what they were put here for. Don't settle for anything less than being where you were born to be and doing what you were born to do. All right, so this is my experience, at least, of how I've been able to discover my calling. And for those of you that are still discovering it, or you want to help others to discover it, here's some simple steps. First of all, pray. Right? Ask God, God, what are you calling me to? What is your purpose for my life? What is your purpose for this business or for this ministry? Study Scripture. Look at when God called Noah and Moses, Nehemiah, Esther, and Jesus. What was going on in their time? Why were they called? Why was that person called for that specific time or that specific reason? And what is going on in our world today, in our society, in your city, in your industry, where you can have an influence, you can have a say? There was a specific function or purpose in that day and time. Ask questions. I already said that. Talk to a mentor or life coach. So I've had a number of men who I have speak into my life, who help coach and guide and direct me as I was discovering this, and now as I'm living this out, constantly checking in with them. Hey, does this sound right to you? I feel like I'm called in this way, or I'm called in this area. Does that line up with what you're hearing from the Holy Spirit about me? Does that line up with what you know about me? And then keep coming here, right? This is a great gathering. Shameless plug for you, right? The fact that you're here among other kingdom-minded leaders, right? You can share stories, you can celebrate what God is doing, and you can check things that you're hearing against others in this room that may have already tried it, may have already succeeded or failed in this thing that you feel like you're called to, right? This is a great group to bounce ideas off of. And what's our response to be? Well, I love this response. In Matthew 4:18, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come follow me, Jesus said. So he was calling them temporarily out of what they were currently doing, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once, they left their nets and followed him. Their response, their obedience was immediate, right? And then, I've already said this, but as transformational leaders who are leading others, our families, our friends, our coworkers, not only do we need to understand our calling, to search it out, discover it, clarify it, but we also need to help others discover their calling. So I believe it's our role to multiply ourselves as called leaders, right? Maybe you have a vision for more in your ministry, in your job, or in your career. And in order to do more, you need to be able to release. You need to be able to find others who have a calling and passion for what you're doing so that you can hand off to them, multiply yourself as a leader, and then go and do that other thing that God is calling you to grow your ministry or grow your job or your career or your business. But sometimes that's hard to do, right? Because that's your baby. That's this thing that you've been working on for so long. But I believe as leaders, just like Christ, who handed off his ministry, we need to hand off. We need to be able to release and let go and allow others to step into their calling. Right? If we don't release and we don't let go, we may be stifling someone else from what they're supposed to do. So that thing that you're struggling with, should I let this go? Should I hand this off? Who's that leader that you can bring in and pour into and help develop them so that they can do that? They can fulfill their calling and purpose, and then you can go on to those other things that God has called you to. All right, so in your groups, really quickly, I just want you to share. What is this stirring within you? What is this stirring within you? Is it for yourself or is it for others? All right, just really quickly in your table groups. Thank you.
I had a coaching session all the way out in Elk Grove.
No worries.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I work with Joanne Moody at Agape Freedom Fighters.
Oh, sweet.
Similar
yeah.
thing. So they actually are doing an event at the Rock today. So
Oh, cool.
Pretty cool. I'd love to
awesome.
give you my card. I'd love to connect with you.
Okay,
Pretty
absolutely.
big similarities. So.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
That you were born into something less than what you were created for, and that God never lost sight of what he created you for. So I was just sharing that, like what you were saying,
Thanks.
Postponing.
Yeah.
So I love that picture of like if we were created to carry the image of Christ, to be loved, to be one thing, we lost sight of that through Adam, born into the fall, that there's something about who you are and who you were created to be that God never lost sight of. He's not dying for me, for us, because he had to, because you were a sinner, and it was like begrudgingly. It was just like there was a place where it's like, you're so valuable, and he never lost sight of that value that changed it from just being something that went in one ear and out the other, like, oh yeah, I'm a son of God.
Right.
Wow, because then I carried some guilt from being the son of God but not performing like a son of God. And then realizing like, okay, there was a fall that took place. What am I going to align with truth or align with the lie, rather than saying my circumstances is the reality of who I am?
Nice. That's good. Awesome.
For years, I used to be a caterer, and for years, God's put this thought in my head, and I went and talked to different ministries about it, and these ministries that take people in, they clean up their act, they're no longer on drugs, they're no longer on alcohol, they love Jesus, they're all ready to go, but if they don't work, tends to be a spiral. So I was bringing to them this idea of creating a catering business within their ministry. So once those people went through all that cleanup of their act, they would then shift over to my side, and I'd get them back in I'd bridge the gap between where they were, give them some skills or improve the skills they have, and then put them over into the workplace. And I would marry the people out in the workplace, the entrepreneurs that come and teach classes to my nonprofit catering business. And then that nonprofit catering business would come out and do stuff like this. Because stuff like this goes on all the time with churches and all that. So then these people here are now in the public's eyes, and then they just might meet somebody here that says, well, and so I was trying to marry the person that gets out of that environment and now into a working community. So I brought it to different ministries. They've loved the idea, just the timing wasn't right for them to do it. So that's one thing that's during the time. And that was brought up even before you spoke, and then it came up more as you were speaking. So maybe we could talk later.
Yeah,
Just,
absolutely.
Yeah, I've always wanted in my heart to change lives since I was a young kid. Because I just believed. I believe you can do anything.
Yeah.
It was what my mother told me as a young kid. And so I thought, well, if I could do anything, I want to help other people believe the same way. But in the secular world, because I wasn't saved or anything like that. So the course of my career has been always mentoring, developing leaders through business, multiple leaders. And when I was in corporate America outside of my businesses, I always had workshops and Bible studies in corporate America, discipling people, getting the word, and helping them raise up leaders to take over. And that's what I do now. But the Lord took me from wanting to change people on a secular level for good, like these Anthony Rogers and all those guys, to something that was far bigger than that, to help them fulfill what we were talking about with the power of the Holy Spirit, their calling for the kingdom, to really raise them up and to duplicate that process. So now that's why I'm stirred up to this home, let people live with us, and duplicate the process. So I've been doing that right now. The Lord just is fine-tuning it, crystallizing it even more.
For me, it's like I'm still trying to formulate some of it. I know God's been dealing with me for several years. I was in real estate about 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't even a thought in my head. I felt like God just really was prompting me to go get my broker's license, and I'm like, why do you want me to get my broker's license, God? And I just, he didn't really answer me. I just knew it was something I had to do, went out and got it, and he led me through sort of a series of events to sort of pushed me, to tell you the truth, really, to pushed me out of the nest, so to speak, and started my own brokerage. And I could see God's hand on all of that, but there's a lot more to it than just that. God, it seemed like every year in the last 10 years or so, when the new year comes around, he'll give me a theme for the year. Well, this year, it seemed like God was just impressing on me, not going to give me a theme this year, he's going to give me a bunch of specific words. And so I've been writing down words this year that God's been giving me, and so they're all sort of starting to come together, and I know God's leading. There's a passion in my heart from a business standpoint, to earn a lot of money and use that money to somehow further God's kingdom. Exactly how all that looks, I don't really know yet. I know I'm supposed to be a patriarch of my family. I know God has talked specifically about, when you said the word bridge, that really clicked. God gave me that word years ago, actually. It's kind of like bridging the older generation with the younger generation. I was born into the family. I was born into a family of 8 kids, and I'm the youngest, so I got brothers that are 20 years older than me. So obviously my parents were an older generation. My parents were almost old enough to be my grandparents, pretty close. And so I've seen an older generation that teaching that a lot of people haven't seen my age. And now I'm starting to get older and older and older and older. So now, just because of age, I'm also that elder. But still, I sort of have that foresight, and I want to be able to hand that down to the younger generation, try to figure out how to mentor that. So there's a lot of things that are stirring,
Yeah.
but none of them, where God's going to lead that, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't really know yet.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as I was sharing that story of Greg, obviously, in order to create businesses that employ more people, rescued, restored people, in particular, in my case and in your case, but in my case, you got to find someone who has, there's got to be that connection, that alignment. There's people that align with what God, you feel like God is calling you to do. Right. So I sense for you that you're going to meet someone who's going to help bring that into alignment. Same with you, right? Someone else has a passion for what you want to do, what God is calling you to do, that aligns, that fuels, or that complements. So I get a sense it's not all on you, right? There's going to be a partnership and an alignment of others. Same with you.
Oh yeah. It has to be.
Yeah.
That's what the community of Christ is about.
It has
Yeah.
to be centered on God.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. That's good. How are we doing on time?
We've got till we're kind of coming to the end of the
Okay.
speaker time, so got maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then we take our requests. So I don't know how if you
Yeah, I mean,
bring it back together.
Yeah, I can wrap it up. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
That's the idea. When he was talking about that guy, right? That's I got that same.
So you'll have business
You said give it a couple more minutes.
What's that?
You said give it a couple more minutes.
He likes to run.
But then you need to,
Yeah, really. A lot of that really resonates. It's amazing once you can solidify who you are in Christ, how the circumstances around you can completely lose their
Yeah.
authority in your life to tell you how good you are.
Right.
So, just, about right now, a year ago, going through a process of selling our house and doing a lot of different things. I thought for years this is going to be me saying, signing the line. Yes, I'm a failure. A lot of lost sleep, a lot of, for years leading up to it, to then go through it and have it be the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Because of the previous couple years really just seeking God to that point, getting more and more revelation on who we are in Christ, who we're created to be, what does He say about me,
Right.
Why do I let any of this say anything about me?
Right.
Who I am is no longer defined by where I am,
Yeah.
what storms I'm going through. So it's like, just to be able to walk through the storm, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
it's incredible the view in here, 'cause
Right,
it's a
right.
mess, and I'm so good. Oh,
Yeah.
God, you are so good,
Right.
because, and people just think that you're good when things are good, and you're bad when things are bad, and
Right.
to realize you can be so good when things are so bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just,
The
now
peace.
I feel like I can go anywhere, do anything. You've got peace, and
Right.
then something stressful pops up, some critical, difficult situation, somebody condemns you, somebody doesn't understand you, and you're no longer, your identity's not
Right,
threatened.
right.
So you can respond directly to the issue, or you can see where they're coming from. And be
Right.
like, wow, they're dealing with this because they can't see this clearly, and there's no need to defend yourself.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's already done. Why do I need to defend myself? Why
Right.
do I care what you even think about me?
Yeah.
What he says about me. That's it.
That's
We're
good.
done. I'm over
Amen.
it.
That's awesome.
It's so good. So
Yeah.
I love kind of where you're coming from on that.
Yeah.
It's,
It's good.
it's just, it's world changing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that resonates because, you come into a group like this where you've obviously got, a lot of people that are in the marketplace and doing ministry and doing business, and, you just, let me wrap up. It's good to know that it resonates. All right. Let me go ahead and close up our time. Thanks again, Scott, for allowing me to come and share. Just really humbled by the opportunity to just come and share a little bit about what I'm learning and how I'm growing. And Barry and I were talking. When the Holy Spirit is guiding and directing you, and you know that what you're doing and is an outflow of what God has called you to do and who you are in Christ. It's not based on your circumstances. There's such peace and joy. No matter what season, no matter how good things are going, there's peace. And so I pray that over you guys. I hope that over you, over your businesses, over your ministry, over your lives, and over those that you are coaching and developing as leaders. I pray for that peace and that joy that comes with that confidence in knowing who you are and what you're called to do. So thanks for allowing me to come and share with you guys today.